Welcome to Markets Now. I'm Michelle Rook with Tomm Pfitzenmaier of Summit Commodity Brokerage. Well, we're seeing a lot of red on the board in grain and livestock futures trade to start off on Tuesday. And Tom, let's talk about soybeans. They were the strongest leg of the grain complex yesterday. Today, we're seeing a little bit of easing. Is that basically some profit taking, you think, as we ran up into resistance? Or is it this fast planting pace that we're seeing?
Both. I think we maybe got a little carried away yesterday, but we're getting the crop planted. We're going into good soil conditions. We maybe have a little dry period here coming, but generally speaking, we have pretty good growing conditions. Expectations are that the crop condition rating, first one when it comes out, is probably going to be relatively high. We are seeing supports this morning by some strength in the bean oil market, so that's a bit of a positive. That market continues to be well supported here in this out of 49 to 50 range. But the USDA also made some assumptions in those numbers yesterday that I'm not sure the trade's exactly buying into completely, especially in terms of demand. It looks like they made hardly any consideration of the potential dust up and trade with China, or the transfer of our demand away from us to Brazil in their new crop carryout numbers. So that has yet to be dealt with as far as I'm concerned.
Right. And of course, yesterday, we did have a lot of questions. The USDA was supposed to use trade considerations or tariff considerations when they made their estimates. Not sure what they did. And at the same time, the market, like we said, we ran up into chart resistance. So is the market going to need more than just a cooling off of these tariffs between the two countries to get over that benchmark level from a technical standpoint?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you're up against resistance without a lot of reason to push it higher. Now, momentum and trend indicators did turn higher yesterday, which sometimes can be meaningful and bring some buying into the market. But like you said, when you run up against resistance and there isn't a lot of carry through information to carry through or make buyers carry through on their buying, I don't know how you sustain this without some sort of announcement and some concrete news that they're going to force the Chinese to fulfill their phase one obligations from 2020, or some dry weather concerns about our crop. It's going to take one of those two things, because the Brazilian crop's been harvested basically and is available, and nobody seems all that interested in buying our beans and has no need to, probably until harvest time or November even. So I don't know how you sustain rallies in soybeans without some of those things falling in line.
Right. You mentioned the soybean oil market. Just briefly, let's touch on the fact that it looks like right now the House Budget Reconciliation Program looks like they want to extend 45Z up until 2031. Is that where we're getting the push, you think?
I assume that's where the strength's coming in bean oil. All of a sudden, we were also supported earlier by strength in palm oil, and that's softened a little bit. Canola oil's set back a little bit. So, I think bean oil is going to have a tough time getting above that 51 to 52 cent range. Without some kind of new news that really stimulates demand, because that biofuels, biodiesel situation, we've been optimistic about it now for a couple of years, and it just doesn't follow through. They've had to shutter some of the plants. So I don't know. I've gotten hooked on that market a couple of times, and I'm a little reluctant to have get hooked again.
Yeah, you aren't the only one. I've heard a lot of folks that maybe bought into that and got burnt. All right, let's
Yeah.
talk about the corn market, Tom. 1.4 old crop, 1.8 billion bushel new crop ending stocks numbers on the surface. They looked pretty bullish, but we saw kind of a poor response yesterday in the market, didn't we?
Well, 1.4 is a low number, but it's also not running out. And you got they bumped the size of the Brazilian crop, I assume, mostly because of the strength, it's a better safrinha crop. And those beans excuse me, that corn is going to hit the market in, roughly the second week of July. So it was a positive that we reduced the carry out. I think some people thought it'd be reduced more. They only reduced exports by 50, and a lot of people ahead of time thought it was going to be 100. Um, but I think the big number that stood out yesterday was the fact that the new crop carry out was 220 million bushel lower than the average trade guess. That was a huge number. And to have that happen and only get a 3.5 cent rally out of it was really disappointing.
Right.
And then the July closing lower was even further disappointing. So it really wasn't a very good day given how great on the surface the numbers looked.
No, and we're seeing follow through selling this morning. Is there just the perception that because of this fast planning number that we are going to have ample supplies here to carry us through?
Well, you got this huge acreage increase. You're getting it planted in I don't know if it's record fast, but a fast pace. We got pretty good growing conditions with some rain in the forecast out a week or two here, so things will get rooted down nice, and then get a rain on them, which should be perfect for crop development. So there's not a lot there to get us excited. And again, I think a lot of people felt that the USDA wasn't real accurate on what their exports were going to be for next year. So they were a little optimistic given the trade issues. So I don't know. I think we're going to have to see some actual results before anybody's going to get too excited on the upside. And then it sort of leads into another topic, and that's the fact that this wheat market made 5-year lows today, and that wheat is really, I think, keeping a lot of pressure on the grains. Um, I mean that's a problem for sure.
Tom, do you think that's the reason why we saw the bear spreading that we saw last week in the market, or the unwinding of bull spreads in the corn, and the July hit so hard was just because wheat is pulling it down?
Well, that's certainly a contributing factor. That's for sure. I mean, like I said, you're going to have Brazilian corn competing against ours in early part of July. So the combination of that, along with the wheat, I think is going to. Well, I don't know. It's going to be at a minimum maybe a basis problem for the old crop corn for guys that are sitting on that waiting for something positive to happen. It might be kind of a long wait.
Yeah. No, I think what you say is very true, and I think we did raise Brazilian production from 126 to 130 million metric tons, and I think that kind of got lost in everything yesterday with so many numbers. The wheat market, though, we have improved winter wheat conditions, but we're already down at contract lows. How much lower do we have to go here?
That's the question, isn't it? It sure looks like we're going to have to take it sub $5. I would guess you're gonna maybe take a test of a really long-term low of 480. I mean, we're very oversold. Stochastics are down to 2, for example, on the Chicago wheat. So you're kind of getting down there where you're probably going to have some kind of a corrective bounce. But you're 30 days away from the winter wheat crop being harvested. Like you said, the crop condition rating was improved in the report wheat on the wheat yesterday. So, worldwide, we probably got the cheapest product, but we aren't selling that much of it. So, that's going to be a problem that's going to take a while to get worked out.
Well, and the funds are, if they're not record short, they're pretty close to it, aren't they?
Right. I don't know exactly what record is. I think combined of the three main wheat crops, they're if not record short, they're pretty
Oh,
pretty close. So at that point, sometimes things change, and you don't expect or know why they do or what
yeah.
makes them change, but they could.
You bet. Okay. New contract and some all-time highs in live and feeder cattle futures yesterday, with the Dow screaming higher and the border closed to Mexican cattle again. Taking a little breather here today, but boy, these setbacks seem to be pretty shallow.
Yeah, I mean, you already have a really, really tight situation in the feeder market, and then to shut off I mean, we only get 5% of our feeders out of Mexico, so it's not a lot. But then again, 5% is a big number when you factor in how many actual head of calves that is. So I don't know. if that doesn't get resolved, that's just going to tighten things again. Now, we've talked for literally starting to be years about how well demands can show up, and everybody's concerned about that for a long time, and it hasn't really been affected by high beef price. But you can't help it think that at some point it's going to. I mean, the cash market, I think this week is waiting to see what the futures do. If the futures stay higher, you're probably going to have a strong cash market at the end of the week when that trades again on the fats.
Yeah. Well, cash has been driving this thing 4 weeks up into record levels. So that's certainly, you can't say any more than cash is king, I guess.
Right.
Now, Mexico's president has asked for maybe only a 15-delay border closure while they work on New World screw worm. Do you think maybe that's a little bit of the easing that we're seeing in the market today?
I think a combination of maybe getting a little carried away yesterday and that news. I mean, you're not down that much on feeders. They're only down 40 cents on the May feeder. So maybe it's correcting, but it's not a lot over that. And actually, fat cattle have just turned higher again on the day as we speak. So, yeah, there hasn't been that great a reaction to it.
Well, that's what I said. Every break seems to be bought here, and they're pretty shallow at that. All right.
Yeah.
Thanks so much. Tomm Pfitzenmaier with Summit Commodity Brokerage. That is Markets Now.